Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists of pointless things while we fly by a pointless statue in Booty Bay, because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is this area that borders Dustwallow Marsh and Thousand Needles. And it's this big kind of open area that's surrounded by a bunch of mountains, but there's still a bunch of room to walk around. In fact, if you go over to the Thousand Needles area with the centaurs, there's a couple centaurs that are like guarding the area from wherever this leads to, but when you go back there and look around, it's literally just nothing. So I'm like, dude, what used to live here? Like, why are they guarding this area? Maybe they're too scared to go into the mountains or something. In the mountains, but I have no idea. And as you look around this big area of land where there's nothing, some parts look like there used to be something. Like, it looks like there could have been villages here, there could have been towns here, and then other parts are just really hard to traverse mountainous pathways. But it's still just really weird coming across these big areas of land where there's just absolutely nothing. And so yeah, you just fly over this area and it almost looks like an alpha zone where you're like, oh, they're gonna be putting something here. And then there's just nothing. And it's been like that for over a decade. So that's why the Dustwallow Marsh Thousand Needle area is number 10. 9. Number 9 is this area bordering Ngoro Crater, Thousand Needles, and Silithus. And I wanted to take the time to actually talk about liminal spaces because I'm sure there's gonna be plenty of comments like, I don't define this as a liminal space, blah, blah. Okay, so broadly, according to Wikipedia, the term liminal space is used to describe a place or state of change or transition. This may be physical, like a doorway, or psychological, like the period of adolescence. Liminal space imagery often depicts this sense of in-between, capturing transitional places such as stairwells, roads, corridors, etc., unsettlingly devoid of people. In fact, the word liminal actually stems from the Latin word limen, or limon, meaning threshold. And so what we have here is a bunch of big empty spaces in World of Warcraft that happened because post-Cataclysm, they had to make Azeroth flyable. And so these big empty transitional pieces of land between zones ended up being a byproduct of that. And this area is no exception to that. It is this big empty desert area where you could put probably an entire town up here and then some. And it just feels like this is just a big place where maybe you could come role play or just bring some friends and run around. Like, it is a massive space with just nothing there. And so that's why it's number 9. 8. Number 8 is this massive area located south of Dunmorrow and just above Elwyn Forest. And this is where 4 pieces of land used to be joined together. It was Burning Steppes, Searing Gorge, Elwyn Forest, and Dunmorrow. And now it's just this big river with a bunch of rock textures all around. And to me, it's a different type of liminal space compared to a lot of the other ones on this list. Because a lot of the other ones are more of like open spaces or just hidden away in the mountains and big flat areas. But this one, I think, is a little different because it's really just a massive river with a bunch of mountains all around it. But I think that's what makes it so eerie, is that this used to be land, right? And then it was destroyed in the Cataclysm, and now there's no reason to go here. Like, nobody goes here unless somebody's like flying over it, and then they're like, where am I, right? And a lot of the liminal space definitions, like I mentioned earlier, are transitional periods or transitional places like hallways and stuff. And so I guess I like to argue the fact that this is, you know, a transitional place where these rivers are kind of blocking each zone. And so you have to go over the river to get to a different zone. And it's just kind of there in the way. Like most rivers and bodies of water in the game have people around it, right? People always live by water. There's ports and people fishing and stuff. But here it's just, there's nobody. And it's kind of weird. So that's why it's number 8. 7. Number 7 is the area above Shatrath City, located between Nagrand and Terakar Forest. And this is one of the few non-Azeroth ones on the list. In fact, it is the only non-Azeroth location on the list, partially because it's so hard to find these types of spaces outside of Azeroth, because obviously, you know, post-Cataclysm making things, you know, go from not flying to flying, it was just kind of weird. So I was like, okay, there has to be something somewhere. And so when I went to Outland, I flew all around, and this was the one spot that I could find where I was like, okay, this definitely feels like it's not supposed to be here. Like, this is just a byproduct of them creating Shatrath and Nagrand and Terakar, and they're like, you know what? Just leave this the way it is. Like, it kind of looks like this big concave area with grass, and it almost feels like a dome in a way. And maybe they were going to put something here, and then they just never did. But it was one of the few ones that I could find outside of Azeroth. And so that's why It's number 7. 6. Number 6 is 2 areas in northern Stranglethorn. They're pretty close together, so I'm kind of cheating and combined them both. But one is this big strip of land bordering on Duskwood, and the other is the area right around this giant gate, which is the gate to the Deadmine Shipyard. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even realize this was the gate to the Deadmine Shipyard until I researched it, and I was like, what is this gate for? And then I read that, and I was like, you know, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know why I never put that together. And so what I find really interesting about the area between Stranglethorn and Duskwood is it feels almost inhabitable, but not really. Like there's too many hills and mountains, but it also is just pretty vast. Like, I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it. It gives me a weird feeling compared to a lot of the other areas, and I don't know why that is, because there's other areas that are like this in World of Warcraft, very mountainous and stuff. Maybe because it's right next to Duskwood or something. It just, I don't know. I felt compelled to put it on the list. And then there's the area by the gate, which has trees just growing through the ground and through the gate itself, which I thought was really cool, but it just looks kind of weird when you see it from behind, and it's just this weird little bowl of land that you can pop into and just look at the trees and stuff, and you can actually go into the gate and walk around, but there's just nothing here, so it's just kind of weird. So that's why Stranglethorn is number 6. 5. Number 5 is this area in the Blasted Lands, and it's kind of between a bunch of different zones, but it's primarily in the Blasted Lands, and it's kind of similar to some of the other ones we've seen, but, you know, it's got different colors, and also the mountain looks like it has a face on it. I don't know if I'm going absolutely insane, but it almost looks like Grimace, like the McDonald's Grimace is on that mountain. Can you see it? I think I might just be crazy, but I kind of see a face. But I think it's that thing where you see faces in things that aren't there, like your brain just makes faces out of nothing. It might be that. I actually did an entire Pointless Top 10 called Pointless Top 10 Hidden Faces in World of Warcraft. I'll link to it at the end of the video, but very similar concept, although some of the faces in that are actually real faces. But anyway, back to the Blasted Lands. I do think this is a really cool area with a bunch of open spaces up in these hills, and it is right next to all those hooded statues over there, so that kind of gives it a creepy vibe as well. Then you can see the outer wall of Zul'Gurub, so that almost feels a bit wrong to be seeing Zul'Gurub from over here. I don't know. There's just a lot of things that make me feel a little odd with this spot, and that's why I think it's pretty cool, and so that's why it's number 5. 4. Number 4 is this giant piece of empty land located in the Southern Barrens right next to Mulgore and Feralis. And what I think is so fitting about this big piece of land is it truly does feel like the Barrens. You know what I mean? Like, it is a big barren piece of land, and there's these 2 little like mountains popping up in the middle of them. And I mean, there's just nothing here, but it really does feel like we're in the Barrens when we're up here. In fact, I would say being up here almost feels more like the Barrens than being in the actual Barrens. I also really like the way the side of the mountain looks. It's not really part of what I'm talking about with liminal space, but it almost looks like an amphitheater with the Quillboar living down there. I just wanted to point that out because I thought it was cool. But this was really the first area I found that made me want to do a list like this, because I came up here and I was like, dude, this is just so much unused space. And it felt really weird to just be walking around this area with nothing here. And again, it just gives the vibe like I'm in a developmental zone, like we're in an alpha walking around and there's just stuff that's supposed to get added here that's never going to get added here. They'll probably revamp Azeroth before they add anything up here. So that's why the giant area in the Barrens is number 4. 3. Number 3 is this area in southwestern Feralis, and it's this big empty area surrounded by some mountains and some silithus crystals and trees and stuff. So it almost feels like you're lost in the jungle when you're here, which I thought is kind of a cool vibe to have. But another cool thing here is there's a chimera flying around, a rare chimera named Prince Lakma, who was apparently added in Cataclysm. And it says here on the WoW Wiki that Lakma is likely the direct offspring of Lord Lakmarin, who is a named chimera located on the Isle of Dread in Feralis in classic World of Warcraft. And so my theory is that this area had absolutely nothing in it. It was just this big empty area, just like there are all over Azeroth after the Cataclysm, and they were like, hey, you know what? What if we just put something here to fill the space? So I think they just added the rare spawn. They're like, hey, you know what? He's from across the water. That would make sense. So that's my theory, but maybe I'm completely wrong. I probably am. But either way, that's why the Feralis area is number 3. 2. Number 2 is this big open area up above the mountains in Moonglade right next to Winterspring. And much like a lot of the other areas we've seen, it just has so much space for just anything. Like, they could put so much stuff here, but it's just a big area of nothing, which again is kind of creepy, but it's also kind of cool. I like seeing these big open areas. It just gives this weird vibe, which I guess is the whole point of a liminal space. But that's not why I put this in number 2. I put this in number 2 because there's a bench here That's right. There's just a random bench here. And it's like you can sit down on the bench and you can look out over the water and just do some meditating, do some soul searching, relax. Like there's some trees nearby and some rocks. And it's actually just a really nice place to look out over the water. And one reason I think this is like the perfect liminal spot is it gives all these vibes. You have kind of a chill, relaxing, nostalgic vibe as you look over the water. But you also have this weird, unsettling vibe because you're sitting next to this big empty space of land that's like nothing's there. It's almost like it's just developmental land, and it's, I don't know, it's a weird dichotomy of feelings. And I think that's perfect for liminal space. And so that's why it's number 2. And number 1 is the Arathi Highlands. There's actually a couple places here, so hear me out. The first one is this massive just field of land. Like it is this, it feels like it could be an entire zone. Like that is how much land is just up here, just completely unused. And it's like, it feels like a battlefield, like there could be a war up here or something. Like it's amazing how nobody has taken over this land yet, because it's just, it feels like the size of a small zone. Like it almost feels like it borders on the same size as Deadwind Pass or like Moonglade or something. And then if you go over to the Hinterlands part, right next to Jintha Allure, there is this big empty space where there's just no water. And if you go here in classic Arathi Highlands, there is water in this, and it flows over into Jintha Allure by these waterfalls. But if you go here in the new version in Arathi Highlands, there's just no water here. It's like they forgot to put the water back, and it just feels kind of weird. Like you can just stand here and there's water pouring out of the waterfalls, but there's no water. It's like magic or something. But yeah, out of all the liminal areas, this was definitely my favorite one, and so that's why it's number 1. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of Pointless Top 10. If you want more Top 10s, you can check out Hidden Faces in World of Warcraft, since I mentioned that earlier in the video, or you can check out Odd Things Underwater in World of Warcraft, since that kind of ties into this video a little bit. Also, like, comment, subscribe, and consider supporting the channel over on patreon.com/crendor or by becoming a channel member. Okay? Okay. See you.